Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Jen and Stacy Conkey with me. They are real estate experts. They've written a book called The Multifamily Freedom Hacking, and they do coaching, they purchase real estate, and they're just gurus in that space. And one of the things that I think you're going to hear as we have our conversation today is even if you didn't have a background in something, you can learn the skills and traits to become great at something throughout your life. So Jen, Stacy, thanks so much for being on today.
Thanks for having us. Oh, we're going to do it in unison.
You guys are practicing greatly. No. So Stacy, we'll start off with just kind of your story. You elected to go to Cal State for school. So talk a little bit about how you picked that school, why you picked it, and what your focal point was going into school.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, that was such a long time ago. When I went into to college, my plan was to go into pharmacy school. I don't know why. I like math, I like science, and it makes a lot of money. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. Because I did not, my parents did not have money growing up. So I was determined to not have that same future. So that was really my goal. And I got into it, and turns out I was terrible at calculus, terrible at physics, and apparently pretty bad at biology as well. So that was that. So I ended up randomly taking an accounting class, and I was like, this is the most amazing thing ever. The debits and the credits, like, I get this.
Yes.
So I ended up going into accounting because I didn't make it in pharmacy school pre-Rex. So anyway, that was me. And I just ended up picking a school that was central. It wasn't about the school. It was really the location. It was central to Yosemite and Sacramento and San Francisco and Southern California. And I just went, and it wasn't really exciting, but my degree is in accounting.
Yeah. Well, so post school, you end up going to Arthur Andersen, which is, at the time, one of the largest, firms across the country. So talk a little bit about, getting foot in the door and starting there in more of like the large corporate America environment.
Sure. It was interesting because my last year of college, and it took me 7 years to finish my 4-year degree. But anyway, my last year of college, I actually ended up transferring up to Sacramento and finishing my last year at Sac State. And it wasn't on purpose, but it turned out that was where the Big Five, it was Big Five at the time.
Yeah.
Big Five accounting firms did their recruiting. And so I was there, and I joined, it wasn't a club. What is it called? A fraternity. They had a fraternity for accounting. Who knew? And so I just got involved and started meeting them. And I don't think
I have those. I'm sorry.
I know, for real, right? I don't think I've ever even talked about this with you.
This is awesome. I feel like I'm getting
I'm gonna help develop your relationship today, guys.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny, Phil, because I remember back then, oh my gosh, I was so out of place. So I would come to these, and the women who were there that were from like the firms, they were just dressed a certain way, and they would wear these little, kerchiefs around their neck. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be this. But I'm smart. I'm really good at accounting. I'm good with people. But so I felt really out of place. And I feel like a lot of people probably, you're in your head a lot, right? About how you don't fit in or how you're not enough and all those things. But I guess, I made enough of a connection that I ended up getting part of the recruitment off, and I ended up getting 3 offers out of the 5 firms. So it was great. And Arthur Andersen in Sacramento was like the firm to go to. And so I chose that. And it was a fantastic start to a career in the 9-to-5 sector, which, I didn't stay in, but it was a great way to start things.
Well, now to highlight that, and this is really a part of both of your lives. We'll get to Jen's side of it. Stacey, we're starting with yours, but that is, when you're progressing through a career and you have a little background like you did, where you say, hey, I didn't come from a lot financially, so I had this goal. An Arthur Andersen can be a great spot, right? Hey, if you just sacrifice like 20 years of your life, you'll be financially compensated better than you could ever be, right? Doing anything else. But you have to put time and effort in. You have to be willing to sacrifice pieces of your personal life, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that in the early years, and maybe like how priorities have shifted over time, not necessarily just financially, but financially too. All right, is this really worth giving up that?
So one of the biggest challenges for me working there was I had to travel a lot. Like, God, it's been such a long time, but think it was about 2/3 of my time was spent leaving and always being gone. And I didn't realize that going in. So for me, when I got in there, and the work itself was interesting, but it wasn't super fulfilling.
Yeah.
From like a soul perspective. And not that it mattered. At the time, that wasn't my goal for it to be soul fulfilling. I just was like, this is what I have to do to get my CPA license. And then when I get my CPA license, then I can go become a controller, then a CFO, and then I can, get up and make $500,000 a year.
Yeah.
Working in corporate America. That's what I thought my goals were at the time. And I spent only the exact amount of time I needed to, and then I got the heck out of there. And I maintained all my relationships from that time, and everybody has gone on. Almost everybody's still in that sector, making huge amounts of money. But I know for a fact that they're giving up their life to do it.
Yeah.
It's just, that's how it is. You don't work 40 hours in accounting. If you're going to be a CFO for a top tier company, you're working 70 to 80 hours at a minimum. And that wasn't the life that I was looking for. So I transferred into the private sector and became a controller for a public company and worked my way up there. And that was kind of where my real like divide in the road came, was when I was working there. But yeah,
So
you give up everything. You give up all of your time.
Yeah.
When you're climbing that ladder, and it was just, the ladder was on the wrong wall for me.
Now, talk about, coming to that point, because eventually you started to teach some classes about like cash flow and, from the sounds of it, kind of property management side of things. So talk a little bit about, that fork in the road that comes. And if I understand correctly, there might have been a Tony Robbins event that made you think bigger. So talk a little bit about, that question that really triggered you.
So it's interesting because the company that I was working for, the CEO, at that time, I was working on getting my MBA, because I just, whatever I do, I got to be the best at. I just got to climb and climb and climb, whatever it is. Yeah. And so I was working on getting my MBA, and I had joined Toastmasters because there's a time the CFO got fired from our company the day before an earnings call. And the CFO is the one who delivers to the shareholders. I created the report, but she delivers it, and she was gone. And so I had to deliver it. So I was sitting in this conference room, and there's literally not even a single person in there, only me, this giant table. There's a phone in the middle. It's not even live, Phil. It's not even live. I thought I was going to die, like straight up die out of fear. All the blood ran out of my whole body. I was definitely about to throw up. And all I had to do was just read what I had already written into a phone that was a recording. Anyway, I was terrified to death. And I just realized I am never going to get where I want to go if I am shackled by this fear. And it was so intense. So I joined Toastmasters. So the CEO was watching my journey, and he was like, listen, I have an extra ticket to go to Tony Robbins, Unleash the Power Within. This is in 2003. So 20 years ago. I really think you'd enjoy it. And I was like, oh my God, that guy with the big teeth, the rah guy, I can't, it's right after quarter end. I got to do this. I got to do that. And he's like, look, you have a staff. It's time to train them. Like, I really think I think you should go. And it was only because of my respect for him that I was like, okay. So I went, and it seemed so ridiculous. I was like, this must be a cult. I come in, there's music, people are jumping and dancing. Like, it hadn't even started yet. I was like, what is the matter with these people? They're nuts. And then, 2 hours in, I'm doing it too, because you can't help it. But that was
a cult.
It was incredible. And so I went into that with a very, very close-minded, and very much like, what am I supposed to get from there? I'm climbing the corporate ladder. And, there's 10,000 people there. So it's not like he was talking to me, but somehow he was talking to me. And he walked us through this Dickens model where you have to put yourself out a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, where nothing changes in your life, and picture, where are you? And for some reason, my unconscious mind must have known I was not on the right path. And so I did that. And I was like, I'm in accounting, and now it's 20 years later, and I'm making $750,000, but I am divorced. I have kids that I don't know at all. And I hate life. And I was like, oh my God, this is what? Like, this is my future. And so I don't know where that came from, but that was the pivotal moment for me. And I didn't get what I was supposed to do. All I knew is I could look at Tony, and I was like, it's that. But I don't know. I didn't know what that meant. Also, I was terrified of speaking, and I just joined Toastmasters like the week before. Yeah. So I was not over it. But that was really where it it shifted. It was the moment I was told, you are on the absolute wrong path for you. You are meant to do something much different, have a much greater impact in the world. And it's not that. But I didn't get to know what it was. And it turned out through going to things, it ended up being real estate. But anyway, that was my fork in the road. Big one.
Well, both of you can comment on this, or either one of you, because I think somebody listening right now is having that same thought, right? Like, I know what I'm doing right now isn't what I want to be doing in 20 years, but I've already put 10 years into it. Like, gosh, can I really afford to take a step back financially? Can I afford to do that for my career trajectory? Because, well, if I just stick it out 20 more, like, then I can have all of that in the future. Talk about, one, finding out what is your passion, but two, being okay with potentially taking a step back to take a step forward.
That's a good one. Yeah, no, I'll take that one. So for me, I'm the peak performance mindset coach for us, and early on in my life, I just knew I was really hungry for personal development, trying to figure out the human brain, the human behavior and things like that. And so my past led to where we are right now of always wanting to be better, always wanting to figure that out. And there's a certain calling that you have inside of you that you just know. And when your ladder's on the wrong wall, you know, because you hit snooze in the morning, or or 5 times in the morning. You're not just jumping out of bed excited about what you're doing. And the first thing that you need to do is sit back and ask yourself, well, what does get me excited? What gets me pumped? For Stacy, it's numbers, not at the time public speaking, but then she clearly realized that she was good at it and good at connecting with people. But there's something inside of all of us that is our unique skill, it's just something that we love to do, and we're good at it, and it helps us help other people. And I think that once you make that transition from just kind of like falling through life unconsciously, going through things, and just doing what you've always known, it's this level of comfort, and then you start to get into like almost a robot, monotonous, and then what's the point of life starts to settle in, and it's usually around that 10-year mark. And then you've got to ask yourself, like, I want more, but I don't know what, and like I don't know how I can show up and do something different, and it is scary. And for me, that's ultimately how it happened. I left high school. All I knew is that I wanted to go make money. And I left home when I was 18 years old with $100. And I left from California, moved all the way to Arizona to go get a job and make money because I was going to be rich. Right. And 10 years into it, I fell into a career and I got a job as a supervisor on a dare. So like you just start to fall into things in life. And then pretty soon it's like, oh, I've been doing this so long. But you don't feel like you can make a different decision. So I would say, think about what you are passionate about and what you like to do, and then figure out a stair-step strategy to do it simultaneously with what you have going on, but preparing an exit strategy, if you will, and taking the steps. If you're doing it while you're doing your other job, which is what I did, I started doing real estate investing in 2002, and my brother showed up at my house and said, let's go to the store. I need to go get cigarettes. And I was like, I don't really want to go do that, but okay. We ended up driving around Bakersfield looking for distressed properties. And the next thing I know, I was juiced because I wanted to go flip houses and I was going to be a millionaire doing it, So that's how it started for me. But oh my God, I'm already making like 60 grand in my current job and I can't just leave that. So my wheels started spinning and I started figuring out how, because I have a solid belief that there's always a way. So I started thinking about, how can I do this? And it was just about stair stepping it and doing it on the side to begin with. So I just encourage a lot of people, think about what you're passionate about and what you would actually jump out of bed in the morning to do, and then come up with a plan on how you can start doing that and do more of it.
I love it. That's really good. So let's start with your story then. Let's rewind a little bit. So we graduate on high school, and I think you started in the corporate world. I think it was what, TRW?
Yes.
And you get inserted there. So talk a little bit about starting there, and quickly you take over a leadership role. So to your point of you're, constantly about growth and development. I think that is something that people see and why you get a promotion to be in leadership and management roles.
Absolutely. So yes, after I graduated high school, I went to Arizona, and my godmother lived there, and she was like, I can get you a job. It's making this much. Back then it was $10.05 an hour. I mean, we're talking 1993.
That's good money.
That was good money back then. That was like, what? Like minimum wage was $4.25, just to give you guys perspective. I'm Gen X and I'm a little old. I'm actually just wise. So I was like, heck yes, I'm going to leave my $4.25 job because I worked at a clothing store in retail, and to go make $6 more an hour. I was all about that. And I was going to figure out however I needed to get there. I didn't care if I needed to hitchhike, if I was going to walk, crawl. I didn't care. I was getting there. So I got there and got in, and I was hungry to try and learn every aspect about the business. That's the next thing, is like, just stay hungry and try to go after all the ways that you can be better than yourself the previous day. So I did. I worked my way up. I was 19 years old by the time that a friend of mine, dared me to interview for a supervisor role. And at the time, I'd already worked my way into being a trainer on one of the lines. And I was like, okay, I bet you anything I can do it. And on a dare and a bet, I interviewed, and then they called me, and I was like, oh my God, I got it. What am I going to do now? So then I started learning more and more, as much as I could, about leadership development, communication, how to influence. And I got super into that. And I realized this is what juices me, is helping people and helping myself become better. And for 10 years, I just did that. And I led teams, and I left TRW. I ended up going during the unfortunately, today's, like, the 9/11 crash, it impacted the economy. I got laid off there, which to me was a pivotal moment, because I was like, I mean, it's open. The door is open for me to do anything now.
Right.
And I ended up moving back to California. And that's when I ended up working at Target and General Mills, and meeting with my brother, and got into flipping. So it's like this layoff that happened opened up a door for me to go learn a different industry. And I had to assign that meaning to it, that this is something new. It's a blank canvas, and I have a new shot, and I've already learned all these other things. So I did that, and I ended up working at Target. And, Target Corporation is known as hiring like the best, like best of the best, but you have to be a leader. You have to be all about leadership development and teamwork. And that fascinated me, because I wanted to learn what they knew. And so I worked there for 8 years, and that was awesome. And like Stacy, I kept climbing, and I kept getting promoted. And it wasn't until 2015, I was making multiple six figures, and also doing real estate on the side. And I had twin 2-year-olds that were just turning 3 at the time. And I was like, I only saw them an hour a day. And when you hit that threshold, and it was another pivotal moment. And I realized, I could actually probably just start doing real estate investing solo, and not have to do this anymore. And then figuring out the strategy to exit that and jump full-time into real estate investing. So I had to do the same thing that Stacy did. I just did it a lot later.
Yeah. No. So talking about that, Jen, you got into real estate after having driven around with your brother and finding these distressed properties. Stacy, how did you get into the real estate side of things?
Well, it started after I went to that UPW event. There was, I don't think they have it anymore, but they were selling like another course, and it was like business something, but whatever it was, they had like real estate and stocks and taxes, a bunch of like wealth stuff. And I was like, I really want to go to this, because I feel like I want to learn. And I didn't know what I was supposed to do, and I wasn't going to just quit my job, but I was like, I feel like I need to learn some new skills. And so I went there. And I feel like the majority of it was 4 days, 16-hour days. And the majority of it was all about stocks, and then some tax stuff. And there was like an hour and a half, one speaker that spoke about real estate. And I was just like, yes, that makes so much sense. That's like debits and credits. It was as clear for me as accounting was at the time. I was like, this is so logical. I buy a property, and then people pay me rent. I like this. And so it was as simple as that. And then I got some books and joined an investor club, and then another one. And, one thing led to another, and ended up investing $40,000 in total crap training that did not prepare me for the real world of investing at all. But that was what got me into it. And then it's hard. Anytime someone's starting in business, it's hard. I totally agree with Jen when she says, like, do something on the side, do it in parallel, because I did not do that. I was the fool that was just like, I'm just going to go do this full time, just shut a straight passion. And it was not a good idea, because the stress level was so high now I have to make a living doing something I don't even know how to do, that I don't ever recommend that for someone. And yes, it takes longer to get it going, but you're probably going to build a foundation, a much more solid foundation, if you just take a little bit slower and do it at the same time. So you're not worried about, can you pay your bills? So I had a really challenging time in my first couple of years, as do most people when you're starting a business. But I felt like the education that I got and paid for, I paid so much money for it, and it was missing it was missing every detail. And I'm such a, accounting background. I need A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like all of it. And then the bullet points between each letter. Yeah. And it was so high level. And at the time I was like, gosh, I was so mad. I was like, if I ever figure this out, and I wasn't even sure that I would at the time, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to teach other people, because this is so easy to give up on because of how hard it is. But it's because of the education I got was so bad and it was so incomplete. And so I was born, and that's where the Tony Robbins thing, that's where the passion was born. It was in the first couple years where I struggled so hard to figure it out. And that's where I was like, I can never let someone go through this. I can never let somebody give up on their dreams because it is this hard, only because the education they got was terrible. I have to figure it out. And that was what led me to start. I mean, I was training even just a few years in. Even if someone was 6 months behind me, I'm like, let me teach you the things I've learned. I wasn't, not to be paid, just let me help you have a better experience, because I don't want you to give up and quit. Because it's hard not to when you make every imaginable mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. So since you guys have a little bit of a different, like, hey, how we got to doing this full time, I appreciate the perspective from both sides, because I think you do hear that so frequently. Hey, you should just jump 100% all in, because if you don't, you'll never be forced to step into it. So you might always just kind of keep it even keel and not fully submerge yourself. Then you got the other side of it where it's like, no, keep your steady cash flow, so that way life isn't super stressful, and you can, through that kind of grow it over time, and eventually, you can jump into it. So you hear both sides of it, and you guys have different experiences with that. So talk maybe about the pros and cons of either which way for you guys.
Yeah, I would actually recommend that there's a hybrid of the two. And so I think that when I look back on my 12 years of trying to go at it alone, the reason why I feel like that was okay is because what it did is it taught me that I was doing stuff by myself, and that was hard. And it was very labor intensive. And at times it made me want to quit. And it felt like, what's the purpose? I'm only doing this for, it seems like $200 a month for this property and that.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel like there was a compelling reason to just let go of what I loved, which was leadership development and personal development in corporate America. I still loved my job.
Yeah.
So to me, there wasn't, I didn't have enough leverage to make oh God, I got to quit right now and go figure this out. But I feel like it served me, because what it did is it put that inside of me that nobody should be doing this by themselves. I did it for 12 years by myself, and that was not fun. So, but what that did is it made me realize, by the time Stacy and I met in 2015, late in 2015, after I had already done all the things to try and quit, and there was a moment with a boss that was very embarrassing, and it really got me my leverage, if you will, where I was like, I'm out of here. And I implemented my strategy. But by the time I met her, she was already doing trainings and doing one-on-one. And I thought, that's awesome. I never had a coach. I didn't. I went to a lot of trainings, a lot of seminars, and at one point had more binders than doors. So that was embarrassing. But she was already doing it. So not only did it tell me, I need to date this broad more, but it taught me that, when she's doing that, her one-on-one coach, I was like, well, what if you did one-to-many and created an entire community so that nobody has to be alone during this? Because that's what was awful for me.
Yeah.
And then she was like, oh my God, that was awful for me too. Yeah. And so that's one thing that brought us together. So there's got to be, and you can obviously answer your response, but I think that there's got to be a hybrid in there somewhere where, you really got to focus on what you want, get really clear on what you want. And then the next step is know why you want it and ask yourself why 7 times, like really get down to why it's a must that you have to do this. And then once you know what you want and you know why you want it all the way down to the 7th level, then when it comes time to take massive action, you can take massive action in 3 to 5 years versus the 12 years for Jen or the 0 years for Stacy, or the first 2 years for Stacy. You can do it in between, like a 3 to 5 year plan. And I would say if you map that out in 90-day increments, it's more digestible. So it doesn't seem so overwhelming. That's how I look at the pros of how I did it. Was it took me 12 years, but it gave me the compelling reason that I needed to start our academy that we eventually started. And it also gave me the ability to start planning things and managing my time well, because I had to do everything in 90-day increments because I couldn't bite off too much more than I could chew because I had a very demanding corporate job. So there are pros and cons. And one of the biggest pros is that I still had my salary and was able to do real estate on the side without any worries, honestly.
Yes.
And because I didn't have those worries, I didn't fail on either side of the fence. And when it came time to just going straight into real estate, I was ready. Do I wish I would have shored up that timeline beyond, or, at least in the single digits? Yes. It was double digits for me though. So I kind of drug my feet, but again, I really loved my job and did the leadership development. Within the last 2 years of my career, it started to not feel so good anymore. And then I had the leverage that I needed, and I just made the cut. Yeah. I don't know if that's different for you.
I don't remember what the question was.
The pros and cons of diving straight in or taking a methodical, longer journey.
Well, I feel like I already kind of mentioned that, but here's the one thing I would say to that, Phil, is this isn't necessarily true for all business and all entrepreneurism. And also it depends on like, what are your expenses? How big is your net that you're trying to cover? I think that makes a big difference. Do you have kids, and what are your responsibilities? And maybe this isn't true for all business, but my perspective is when you're doing real estate investing, it is really easy to make 5 and 6 figure mistakes, especially when you get into apartment investing. You can easily make a 6-figure mistake by one little error. And when you are under this tremendous pressure you got to make it work because you don't have a steady income, the reason I always, even with our students, I'm like, look, I want you to be able to leave your job. And some of them have left their job after they've been with us for a year and a half. But I'm like, look, don't leave it right away, because you're going to feel the pressure and you're going to move probably too quickly, or you're going to push too hard to make a deal work that really doesn't. And it just, it clouds your perspective. It clouds your judgment. And that's the main reason. It's not that I would say that for all business ventures, but for real estate, because if you make a bad decision, it sometimes takes you years to recover from that. And again, and some people will make that mistake and then quit. And I'm like, no, that's part of my purpose on earth, is to make sure, like, no, don't quit. Let me teach you how to do it the right way so you don't have to suffer and give up on your dreams. Your dreams are totally doable. You just need to know how to do it. And you need to be smart about it. Yeah. So that's why I feel like if people are just leaving their job, they're going to push too hard to make a deal work that doesn't. Yeah. And I just don't ever want that for somebody, because it's so easy to just say, forget it. This isn't worth it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, I think there's a path to mastering a new thing, right? And when you're already doing something for 10 years, you've known it. And I think we tend to forget how we became the subject matter expert of whatever field we're in. And I think we tend to forget the work it took, the consistent effort, the time we put in, all the hurdles and all the ways we grew over those 10 years. And I think what happens is then, because we forgot that and we dive into something new, we expect to just get it, because I'm super smart and I do this for 10 years. I know this really well. And, but we forget that there's actually a path to mastery. And what happens is when you're entering into something new, you unconsciously you are incompetent. You don't know what it is. You don't even know what to ask because you don't know what you don't know, but you think you know, but you don't know. It's kind of like that Friends episode. And then it comes to step 2 where it's like, okay, I'm conscious that I'm incompetent in this and I need to get more information. And it's usually in that step, in step 2, where we start to realize, oh my God, there's a lot more to this than I thought. And then self-doubt creeps in. And then instead of rising to the level of skill that's needed to move through, we rest back in what's comfortable. And as soon as you get past that phase though, that's where the magic starts to happen. So if you can just give yourself the grace to understand, it's going to take me a while to master something new. Let me plan that out. And what does that look like for me? How long did it take me to master this? I could probably apply the same methodology or framework to learning something new or implementing something new. And let me give myself the grace to do that. And then plan an exit strategy from my job financially and mentally. So I wanted to add that.
No, that's perfect. And something that I think is important is getting started versus mastery, right? There's a big gap in between just getting started and mastery of something. However, and Jen, you said it, you had more binders than you had doors at one point. And I think what happens is we want to know all the answers before maybe we even need to. And the reality is, for most things in life, you need to have a baseline understanding of things, right? Don't just make a decision, a big financial decision or a decision with no baseline understanding. But at the same token, if you're waiting until you have all the answers, low probability you'll ever be able to progress, because most of the answers are learned through
Yeah.
experience, right? So talk a little bit about that. Like, hey, make sure, you're growing your knowledge, you have some type of a knowledge before you step into something, but don't allow the I'm not a master of something to prevent you from growing to mastery level.
Oh, you go ahead. I heard you take
Okay.
an inhale.
You heard me
You
inhale.
definitely have some input.
Um, I 100% agree with that. It's funny because people like me, who have, backgrounds in like accounting and engineering, like really, what do we call it? Really analytical people, will tend to want to have all the information, which is why I'm like, no, I need to know A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and all this bullet points in between, which is also my teaching style, because naturally everybody must want that much detail, but that's not true.
No.
But so there's certain personality types that really it's hard to make that move and get started, because you feel like you need all the information. And at some point, and Jen talks about this a lot, you really have to have a compelling reason, like your why, right? People say it all the time, but it's really true, because when you have fear, or you feel like I don't have enough information, and certain personality types, that's just, you live in that space, you have to have a big enough reason to push you, to create leverage, to get you to make a move. And because that's the truth of it. I absolutely 100% believe in getting educated in what you're going to do, but you can't be educated for the rest of your life. You have to, at some point, take what you've learned and understand how to mitigate risk so that you can make informed decisions. But then you got to put one foot in front of the other and do one scary thing. That's what we talk to our students about all the time. Like, all you need to, here's the whole process, but all you need to worry about right now is just this one step. Just do the market research, and here's how. And once you're done, then you're going to start calling realtors. I know it's terrifying, and I know you're going to want to barf your whole brains out when you're getting on the phone, because they're going to ask you a question you don't know how to answer. But just you're taking like one achievement at a time. And ultimately, that truly is the only way you absolutely learn it at a cellular level, is doing whatever it is. Yeah. And so I agree. It's like, get a baseline and understand what the risks are. That's the only caveat I put in there, is understand what the upsides and the downsides are, and do everything you can to mitigate the downside, and then move forward. Yeah. Does it mean everything you do is going to be perfect? No. And are your first things, whatever it is in whatever business or in real estate, are your first ones going to be, home runs? Probably not, but you're never going to hit a home run if you don't even get up to exactly. Like, take a swing, and then you learn, and then you grow, and then you're ready for the next thing. And then the next.
I think that also a thing I'd like to share is that there's 5 reasons why most people quit. And you kind of got to assess where you are on the spectrum of those. And the first one is it's ultimately the wrong motivation. That's why people usually quit. And the motivation is what Stacy said, the compelling reasons. There's an external goal that we're striving for, and there's this internal intrinsic motivation that drives us. That's our compelling reasons. So once you have that, that's cool. But step number 2, the reason why most people quit is wrong expectations. So that's like when you go in and you expect that I'm going to be an expert at this, and then, oh, wait, I'm not. And it actually requires a lot more effort and consistency. So gauge yourself on that. Are you somebody who wants instant gratification? Because if you are, you're going to have to spend a lot of time on your expectation of when you're going to get results. The other one is lack of time. I mean, we all get 24 hours in the same day. So if you are struggling to manage your time now, you're probably going to be struggling to manage your time while doing 2 things. So I just advise you, make sure you time block. If you don't know about time blocking, research it, Google it. You'll see all the things, all the ways. But it's basically like take 90-minute chunks to do tasks so that you can stay in the zone. And then there's, lack of support or lack of enjoyment. Those are the last 2 reasons. So lack of enjoyment is probably a big one. There's a type A personality like us, and probably you, Phil, that we want what we want. We know why we want it. We're going for it. And it needs to happen right now. Right. And it's like, I don't have time to party about that or enjoy that at all. And, there's a secret to momentum. And that's like when you set that external goal that you're striving for, and you have your internal motivation to move forward with it, celebrate when you're 90% to hitting that goal. Celebrate, and then plan your next goal. That way, 90% to goal, you're celebrating, and you already have the next goal in mind, because what happens is if you don't, you're either going to do one of 2 things. You're going to celebrate when you get to 100% and then slack off for a little while. And that's how people like, they hurry up and burn out, and they hurry up and burn out, or they just keep going and then burn out after, 3 or 4 projects. So celebrate along the way to avoid that. And then the lack of support, like look at your internal circle and who you're spending time with. You are the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And are those the right people that are going to support you to where you're going? So assess yourself on those 5 reasons why most people quit. And if you score well, then awesome, go ahead and start making your plan. And then, but if you don't, identify where you might need to make some mindset tweaks, and then make those tweaks and then make your plan.
I love it. Yeah, you're going to want to rewind and listen to those 5 and then dive into that. That's really good. Now, Jen, you alluded to it earlier. There was a date that happened, and then the 2 of you realized that both of you are in the real estate space, but in kind of like a different realm of like what we're doing real estate wise. So talk a little bit about how serendipitously the 2 of you have met, and how that came to be.
Yeah, so we met, it was late in 2015. And when I found out that she was, doing multifamily investing and knew how to do it remotely, I had been banging my head on the wall in California, where you don't make a lot of margin there. You have to put a lot of money at risk to make a very slim profit, and it doesn't really cash flow very well. So to me, I was like, wait, what? You do it remotely? What the hell does that mean? And that started the conversation. And then finding out that we both had gone to so many seminars, and we decided, like, you know what, let's try and figure out, apartment syndication. That'd be a great next step for both of us. And I mean, based on the fact that I'm super methodical and she's super passionate, and I'm a super perfectionist and she's super not, like between the 2 of us, we could figure this out, and it'd be awesome. And, just both of us being so frustrated with not getting the implementation when we would go to these trainings, we had a very common, passion for making sure that people got it right. And I had a passion of making sure that we created something that was like togetherness, right? We ended up going and learning about syndication. And when we went to implement, it was like, oh my God, this, like, it's $30,000 to just find a securities attorney and get a private placement memorandum and do all these things. And it's so costly. And then when you go to try to implement, the bank's like, you haven't operated this asset before, this asset size, so you need to go get a sponsor. And it was just a lot.
Yeah.
And so about 3 months into it, we were like, you know what? And we had a very huge pivotal moment and realized we know what got us our 2 to 4 unit properties that we have in our portfolios. And we could use that same approach in apartments just to get started. And it was joint venture. So we started doing joint venture on smaller apartment buildings until we really like worked that system out and identified, this will work. And then that's how the Academy was born. And like, we're known as the #1 joint venture for apartments and scaling in the industry. But that's because we had that epiphany and realized that, you know what, we don't have to go with the way everyone else is doing it. We actually could apply what we've been doing on a smaller scale and stair step it. And then we don't need to worry about sponsors. And then Stacy, of course, was like, oh my God. And then we figured this out. Let's go tell everyone. And so then that's how we created the Academy. And then I had oh my God, I have a group of people now. So we're both very happy. It's 8 years later, and we've been very busy building that community and building a skyline with all of our students and having a good time. But without those moments and those open conversations and really realizing what you have in common, and what you've already used, a strategy that you've already used, or a framework that you've already used in the past that could apply in the future and help you be successful or get through a particular challenge, that's where the gold is. And it was exciting. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question. Actually,
Nailed it.
Oh, okay.
So something that comes to mind though is partnering, right, or bringing other people in. You hear the horror stories of partnering, right? You hear the horror stories of bringing in outside funding, or whatever it is. And so I guess the question that I would ask is, before it can become a horror story, how do you do your due diligence to make sure you align with the people that you're bringing into your circle? And once again, we're talking about it in the scope of your real estate business, but I think that could be a lot of different things for the person listening right now. It doesn't have to just be a real estate application here.
Yeah, I think just relationships in general. I'll give that answer, and then I'll let Stacy talk about due diligence things with creating a team or surrounding yourself. But I think relationships, it comes down to ABCs. It's agreements, boundaries, and communication. So you've got to identify the people that you have commonalities with. If you can't survive a 6-hour car ride with somebody, you probably don't want to get into a deal or into business with them. If you go on a trip with somebody, traveling and challenges, usually they rear their ugly head, and you see how people respond to challenges and problems, and how fussy do they get, how well do they communicate. So you start to see characteristics in somebody, and you can identify, man, is this somebody I would be wanting to do business with? And then the agreements that you come up with and the boundaries that you set, how well are they at communicating when boundaries are potentially being crossed, or how well do they take it when you're communicating that boundaries are being crossed? I think that those are pretty key principles that you need to look out for. I mean, when it comes to real estate, though, I mean, she's the queen. She'll tell you exactly what it means.
Well, I really think that this applies to all business, but since real estate is the area that I have the most experience in, I think, when you're getting into partnership, one of the things that's really, really important, other than just getting to know the people, is making sure, because especially when we have got two investors and they're both new, or they haven't done a lot of deals, or they're new in multifamily and they're getting together to do their first apartment deal. Sometimes they don't think about, like, are we actually aligned in what our goal is? So for example, if my goal is, I want cash flow, like equity is nice, but I really don't care about equity. I want cash flow right now. And if the other person is like, well, yeah, cash flow is nice, but like, I'm all about the 5-year mark and cashing out that 7-figure profit. Like, those are conversations that you need to have very early on. And it seems very obvious when we're talking on the outside, but it happens, like, where people are like, oh, we totally get along, this is going to be awesome, let's do business together. But they don't actually talk about, like, what is your goal, and are our goals aligned? Because when you get into a deal, it's basically like a business marriage, and you're going to be together for many years, at a minimum 3 years, but possibly, 5, 7, or 10 years. So I think that's a really big one. Another one that comes up is, okay, what happens when something goes wrong or is unexpected? Because that's the one thing about any business, you can guarantee something is going to happen that you can't foresee, you can't expect. So as much as possible, talking through, like, well, what would happen if there was some unexpected expense or something like that? Who's going to contribute, or how are we going to fund it? And let's get in alignment on that stuff now. And then the other part of it is having an LLC operating agreement that outlines those things. Like, what happens if somebody dies? I mean, not to be morbid, but what if somebody dies? Like, what happens then? Does the control go to the partner? Does it go to the spouse? Is it, like, what happens? So those are conversations that are not really fun to have, and they feel uncomfortable. But the reality is, if something does come up, you're infinitely better off having had the uncomfortable conversations and having an attorney, spending a little bit of money on the LLC, having the attorney write it up in such a way that it covers as much of the basis as you can. But I think when we hold our events for our students, one of the things that we're very big on is the network. We incorporate so much networking time for the relationship building. But then one thing that we do for as far as activities is we will frequently do activities that they're really fun, but they are intended to
expose the characteristics when challenges pop up. Like, here's an escape room. Get out of it together,
Or like we did a photo scavenger hunt once on a ship, and once like in downtown San Diego. And you start to see, like, there's some people that are like, all right, we're going for it. And other people are like, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. I don't want to ask that person to take a picture kissing my cheek or whatever. And it's just those kinds of activities are good to really get to know people and get to know their personalities and make sure like you're aligned. Because I have seen partnerships before where, it seemed like a good idea because it's like, oh, I have the deal and I have the money. But the reality is, like, they could not be more different as far as their approach, their communication, their goals. And it's just, then it's painful for all of them, for everybody in the deal when that's the case. I think really spending time to get to know people is a big one. And then aligning with goals, and then making sure that as much as possible, you address all the things that could go wrong. And we don't ever, like, we're huge proponents of the secret. We don't focus on what can go wrong. We focus on what we want, what can go right. But there's just a reality is, chances are more stuff will go right if you just handle and have it in writing, so you don't have to worry about it. It's already been decided on if anything came up that you needed to do.
I love it. And it's so true. Now, another spot in which you would want to align is who you're going to hire to be a coach, right? So you guys are in the coaching space and you're helping, people build their businesses. And I'll never forget the first business coach I had. It was purely off of a recommendation. I did no interviews. I just signed up. I said, yeah, I'll do this for 6 months. Like, whatever, it sounds great. Unfortunately, very quickly in our weekly calls, I realized that she had never done the business that I was in. And so she could talk about it from a theoretical standpoint, but as to, the actual like feelings I was having or the actual like struggles I was having, it was just different. And she was teaching from what I felt was like a textbook answer versus like yeah, well, when I was in that, here's what I did to get out of that, right? So after that had ended, then I did some interviews, and now I've had my business coach for the last, almost 6 years now. And when we talked, it was like, so here's my credentials, here's what I've done. And it's like, all right, one, you've done more than what I've done in the same industry. So I want to aspire to be like that. But two, there are other elements of you as a person that I'm like, man, I really think I could be just a better human by aligning with you as well. So you guys have talked about your growing, we'll just call it your tribe, right? I mean, whatever it is that we want to call it, you're growing that, but why would people pick you guys, right? I mean, shoot, let me get on Instagram. I can find, 100,000, people that claim to be real estate coaches. But how do you guys align, and how do you find people that are going to be best fit to coach with you? Not only so you guys enjoy it, but so they get the most out of it.
I heard you inhale too. You can start. Go ahead.
Here we go. We go ahead and inhale. I think the thing that differentiates us the most is that we have such an emphasis on mindset. 80% of this business is actually in your head. 80% of any business is in your head. I'll just go ahead and throw that out there. 20% of it is the mechanics that's happening behind the scenes, that, the process that you're trying to master. But what it really comes down to is mastering yourself. Mm-hmm. So we focus a lot on mastering what's between the two ears, to stay in the right peak state performance and looking at things and assigning the proper meanings versus looking at things from despair. So teaching them how to manage their own mindset and create goals for themselves that are realistic, but when they're starting to feel like it's not possible, when they're starting to feel like they're not good enough, we have the skills to pop them above that line and keep them going again. And then just quite frankly, we are the #1 academy out there. You can look, you can research. I highly encourage you to do due diligence, but we are the #1 academy when it comes to joint venturing on apartments on a smaller scale, so that you can stair step into syndication, which, we're syndicators, we do that, but we want to teach people how to start small scale so that they get an asset that they can actually manage and operate, and then double the door count, and then know how to manage that one, and then double the door count, because we don't want them to end up being a motivated seller, or a burnt out landlord. Yeah. We teach people how to use third-party property management so that you're not a burnt out landlord. I think the biggest reason why you should pick us, if you're considering it, is our network. So when we talk about these partnerships, we do a lot. We do 4 events a year, and we do a lot to have people identify the best role for them. So my vision is I want 300. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I want 300. I want 100 teams of 3 people. And those 3 people each have a role on the team. One's an acquisitions manager, one's a capital raiser, and one is the asset manager. If I have 100 people, do 3, all of them in teams of 3, 100 people doing 2 deals a year, with the average deal size being 100 doors, that's 20,000 units a year, which equates to, at about $150 a door, $3 million a month, right? And we are building that empire, constantly recruiting and constantly building. We have, I think it's 32 of that 300 already that's out there doing that work. Oh, cool. Because we give back. What I mean by that is, like, you will come into this situation and you will develop your own cash flow. You'll develop your own wealth and your legacy that you're going to leave for your family. But eventually, once you can live off of that, we have a higher calling, and anybody that wants to actually like change the world with us, we want to give back, and we want to take this kind of like Leonidas has his elite bodyguard soldiers. We have our elite 300 out of our academy, and go do good with it. We want to go. We have things that we want to do to give back. I think the biggest differentiation is our network, though. We have the most amazing network. We do all kinds of really fun things at our conferences. I do board breaks with everybody. I have you create your entire ideal life, what that looks like for you, and dream big, and anything that you feel is actually impossible to do, you write that down, you draw it, you do all those things. And then I hand you this 40-pound arrow, that could kill a grizzly bear, and I have you break it with your throat to prove that you can do anything. And then with that level of empowerment, when you walk off of that stage after breaking an arrow with your throat with me, you are invincible. You feel like, oh my God, I just broke a 40-pound arrow that kills a grizzly bear with my throat. I'm going to go do whatever I want. That's the difference. So it's about the emotion that you feel when we're in your life, because we come with a warning symbol. We will change your life. Like we will. Yeah. Aggressively helpful.
Yeah. Hey, I love it. Now, for someone that's maybe not in the phase of getting coaching yet, you guys wrote a book and you said, hey, we can also help change lots of lives by going out and grabbing the book. And then, that's going to be a good introductory, and you'll probably want to progress to coaching with us. But talk about how the book came to be and a little bit about some of the ideas that one can take away from the book.
Well, people have been asking us for a long time, like, you guys ever going to write a book? We're like, oh my God, we're so busy. Like we have all of our own multifamily real estate when we're in acquisition mode. We have our academy. We have 4 kids that are in homeschool. Like we're busy. Yeah. But people would ask, like, you guys ever going to write a book? And so finally we're just like, oh my God, let's just do it. And so we just, it didn't take us very long. It took us about a month start to finish, but we just went into a very focused mode. And when we were deciding, like, what do we want to offer in this book? For me, at least for me, I don't know if I'm speaking for Jen with this. My heart is for the noob, the newbie, the person who's never done a multifamily deal, or maybe they've done some single families, they have a couple, rentals, but they've never done multifamily and they want to. So when we were sitting down to create, like, what do we want to cover in this? I was like, what are all the things that if it would have given me at least an overview when I was brand new of, like, what are all the pieces of this, and starting to paint a picture of, oh, okay, got it. And it's just, so we talk about, like, the difference between residential multifamily and commercial, because some people like to start with 2 to 4 units. And right now with interest rates, it's hard to argue that that's a great way to go, just because you don't have enough units to make a lot of cash flow. But we have a lot of people in our academy that was where they wanted to start, just because that's where they are comfortable. And then they move into apartments. So we talk about the difference of 2 to 4 units, and then apartment buildings, how they're valued differently, just everything, how you operate them differently, what the opportunity is, how they're financed differently. And we just really sought to give true value, because I know there's a lot of book. Oh my God, I just read one. Remember last week I was in the pool. I was reading this book and I was like, did they write this on Chat GPT and literally hit print without ever reading any of it? This is horrible. I am so mad that I paid for this. It's crap. It's garbage. It's like, I believe in high quality education, even if it's something for free. Like, let it be valuable to the world. You don't have to make money from someone to give value. It'll eventually come back. Anyway, so when we did this, it was really to give, like, good, solid place for someone to start and understand the foundation. And then certainly if someone wants to get help, they want to have their hand held, they want to be a part of a supportive community, they want to be part of people who actually focus on mindset and want them to win. Like, our focus is so much on our students getting results that is our driving force. And if they want to be in that, then we would hope then from all the information we gave in this book that they'd be like, you be the natural choice for me, because I resonate with your style. I resonate with your values, and I want to be a part of what you're doing. Yeah.
I will warn you though, the first 6 chapters of the book are mindset.
I love it. That's great.
Because that's it literally, we do believe that's the foundation. Because it's all in your mind. Whatever you hold in your mind, you're going to manifest in the world. So our first 6 chapters are about mindset and setting that tone and setting that foundation. So I feel like the book is a really good mix of the mindset and the overview of what plays and all the assets. So it's a pretty good book. You can get it on Amazon.
I love it. Well, Jen and Stacy, I want to say thanks so much for coming on, just sharing your journeys and everything that's gone into where you're at. And I'm excited to continue to watch your story and see 10 years from now where we're at. And we'll have to hop on probably before that and talk through once we've already hit the 100 groups of 3, the 300 that you guys have, what we're progressing to next. So thank you again so much for being on.
Thank you for having us, Phil.
I appreciate it.